Part 1. The arrival of the transport ship shuddered as it docked with the massive space station. Guwu pressed her face against the small window, watching the metal arms lock into place. Her stomach twisted with nervousness. This was her first time so far from Earth, her first time working with alien children. She touched the small pendant around her neck, a gift from her mother, and took a deep breath. The station was enormous. Jiwoo had seen pictures, but nothing prepared her for the reality of it. Corridors stretched in every direction, filled with creatures she had only read about in textbooks. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some had fur, others had scales or skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal. Everyone moved with purpose, barely noticing the nervous human woman clutching her single bag. A tall figure approached her. It had 4 arms and pale blue skin, with gentle eyes that reminded Jiwoo of her grandmother somehow. "You are the human specialist?" the figure asked in careful English. "Yes, I'm Jiwoo. I'm here for the orphanage wing. I am Nurse Voren. Follow me, please. We have much to discuss." Voren's voice carried a warning that made Guwa's nerves spike even higher. They walked through the station for nearly 15 minutes. Voren explained the situation as they moved. The war had ended 6 months ago, but the damage remained. Thousands of children had lost their families. The station housed 23 of them, all different species, all traumatized. Most of the staff had quit or requested transfers. Why? Jiwoo asked. Voren stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because they are dangerous. Not by choice, you understand? But when they are frightened, they react. Young Kelthians have paralyzing screams. Morphian cubs produce acidic mucus when stressed. Dravik younglings have venomous spines. We have had 12 staff injuries in 3 months. Jiwoo felt her chest tighten. How are they housed? Individual containment units? For safety. They're in cages? Jiwoo couldn't keep the horror from her voice. Secure medical units, Voren corrected firmly. Would you prefer injured staff? Dead children who harmed each other in panic? Jiwoo wanted to argue, but she understood. These people were doing their best with an impossible situation. They didn't know what else to do. Can I see them? The orphanage wing was quieter than Jiwoo expected. The units lined both walls of a long corridor, each one transparent so the occupants could be monitored. Inside each unit, a small creature sat or lay in carefully controlled environments. Some had heating elements, others had humid mist. All were alone. Jiwoo walked slowly down the corridor, looking into each unit. A small furry creature with 6 legs and beautiful crystalline eyes watched her pass. Its ears flicked forward with interest. In the next unit, an amphibious-looking being pressed against the glass, its large eyes following Jiwoo's movement. Further down, an insect-like child with a delicate shell sat very still, but Jiwoo could see it was breathing rapidly. "They're terrified," Jiwoo whispered. "They are safe," Voren replied. "They're isolated." "That's not the same thing." Voren's 4 arms crossed in a gesture that seemed defensive. "What would you have us do?" "Your people requested this assignment. The Coalition herd humans are good with young ones. So far I see only another idealist who will quit after the first injury." Jiwoo turned to face the nurse. "I won't quit, but I need to do this my way. Can I have access to this corridor? I won't open any units without permission. I just want to spend time here." "To do what?" "To let them get used to me." Voren considered this. Finally she nodded. "You may come during day hours, but you touch nothing without supervision." "Understood?" "Understood." That afternoon, Jiwoo returned to the corridor with a small book and a cushion. She placed the cushion on the floor near the middle of the corridor and sat down. Several of the cubs immediately retreated to the backs of their units. Others watched with suspicious curiosity. Jiwoo opened her book and began to read aloud. She read a simple story from Earth, about a rabbit and a turtle who became friends. Her voice was soft and steady. She didn't look directly at any of the cubs, didn't make sudden movements. After 30 minutes she closed the book, said, "Good night, everyone," and left. She came back the next day and did the same thing. And the next day. And the day after that, by the fourth day, most of the cubs were sitting near the front of their units when she arrived. The small furry one with crystalline eyes, who Voron had called Pip, pressed its nose against the glass. Jiwoo noticed but didn't react. She just read her story in the same calm voice. On the fifth day, Jiwoo brought a different book. This one had pictures. She held it up occasionally so the cubs could see the images. A few of them made small sounds, not quite words but clearly interested. The insect-like child, Ina, tapped on her glass with one delicate leg after the reading. Jiwoo did something different. She began to hum. It was a lullaby her mother had sung to her as a child, simple and repetitive. The melody seemed to calm something in the air. Even the cubs who had remained wary moved closer to listen. Voron appeared at the end of the corridor watching. When Jiwoo finished and stood to leave, the nurse approached. "They are responding to you. I do not understand it, but I see it. They just need to know I'm not a threat," Jiwoo said. "They need consistency. Someone who shows up and doesn't hurt them. You cannot do this forever. You must make progress eventually." "I'm making progress. Watch." That evening, Jiwoo submitted her first formal request to Administrator Plex, the station's crystalline director of child services. She wanted permission to enter one of the units. Just one, just for an hour, with full supervision and safety protocols. She wanted to sit with Pip, the small Kelthian who watched her so intently. The request was denied. Too dangerous. Insufficient data. Unacceptable risk. Jiwoo tried a different approach. The next day, she brought her cushion into an empty unit next to Pip's. The door remained open, but she stayed inside, reading as usual. Pip pressed against the shared transparent wall, trying to get closer. "I see you," Jiwoo said softly, still not looking directly at the cub. "I see you watching." "I'm not scared of you," Pip made a small chirping sound. "You're not scary. You're just small and alone and you've seen terrible things. But you're safe now. I promise." The chirping continued, softer now. Almost like crying. Jiwoo stayed in that empty unit for 3 hours that day. The next day, she did it again. She brought her lunch and ate it there. She read 2 books. She hummed her lullabies. She existed peacefully in Pip's space without demanding anything. On the 7th day, exhausted from a double shift helping in the medical bay, Jiwoo came to the corridor late. She entered her usual empty unit and sat in the cushioned chair someone had brought for her. She opened her book, fully intending to read. Instead, her eyes grew heavy. The words blurred. Just for a moment, she thought. Just rest for one moment. Jiwoo fell asleep. She didn't see Pip's unit door, which maintenance had accidentally left slightly unsealed during repairs. She didn't see the small Kelthian cub carefully push it open. She didn't see Pip approach slowly, trembling with fear and hope. She woke an hour later to find Pip curled against her feet. The small creature's rapid heartbeat gradually slowing to a peaceful rhythm. The cub was touching her, trusting her, sleeping beside her. Jiwoo didn't move. She barely breathed. Tears ran down her face as she understood what had happened. The barrier had finally broken. For the first time since the war, Pip felt safe enough to choose connection over isolation. When Voron found them 20 minutes later, the nurse stood frozen in shock. Then slowly she tapped a message into her communication device. "Administrator Plex, come to the orphanage wing immediately. The human has made contact." Peaceful contact. Jiwoo looked up at Voron with tears still on her cheeks. She chose this. "I didn't force anything." "She chose?" Voron's expression softened in a way Jiwoo had never seen. "I know, I saw the footage. You were sleeping. She came to you." The nurse's voice carried wonder. "In all my years, I have never seen this. A war-traumatized cub approaching a sleeping alien. She trusted you completely. What happens now?" "Now," Voron said slowly, "we consider that perhaps the human way might work after all." Part 2. Breaking protocol. The meeting room felt cold despite the temperature controls. Jiwoo sat across from Administrator Plex, whose crystalline body refracted the overhead lights into rainbow patterns on the walls. Beside Plex sat Vorin, and at the head of the table, Commander Thalvar, the station's military overseer. His species was one Vaiwa hadn't encountered before. Tall and imposing, with thick armor-like skin and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything. "Your request is denied," Plex said, his voice resonating like wind chimes. "You wish to open all containment units simultaneously? This violates 17 safety protocols." Wu had expected this response. She took a breath and leaned forward. "The cubs aren't dangerous when they feel safe. Pip proved that. She had every opportunity to hurt me, and instead she curled up at my feet. She was gentle." "One success does not establish a pattern," Plex replied. "Pip is uniquely calm for a Kelthian youngling. The others are more volatile." "Because they're more scared," Wu insisted. "Isolation is making them worse, not better. Their behaviors are trauma responses. On Earth, we learned that isolated children develop severe psychological damage. These cubs need social contact." Commander Thalvar spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rough. "I have heard things about your species. Humans bond with anything, yes? You make companions of predators. You adopt creatures that should eat you. Is this why you think you can manage our war orphans?" Jiwoo met his gaze steadily. "We bond because we understand loneliness. We know what it feels like to be afraid and alone. And yes, we believe that connection heals better than isolation." "Pretty words," Thalvar said. "But I need evidence, not philosophy." "Give me 2 weeks," Wu said. "Let me create a safe space, a common room. I'll start with just 8 cubs, the ones who show the most interest in my visits. Full supervision. Any sign of danger, we stop immediately. 2 weeks to prove this works." Plex's crystalline form shifted, refracting light differently. A sign of agitation, Jiwoo had learned. And when a cub panics and injures you? When venom or acid or psychic screams harm you permanently? Earth will hold us responsible. "Earth sent me here knowing the risks," Jiwoo said. "I'm not asking you to guarantee my safety. I'm asking you to let me try to help these children." The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Thalvar made a decision. 2 weeks. But you signed full liability waivers. Any injury is your responsibility. And I want daily reports. "Thank you," Jiwoo breathed. "Do not thank me yet," Thalvar said. "If this fails, the program ends. No more human specialists." The cubs returned to standard protocols. The weight of that settled on Jiwoo's shoulders. This wasn't just about these cubs anymore. It was about whether humans would be trusted with vulnerable alien children across the coalition. She nodded. "I understand." The next 3 days were spent preparing the common room. Jiwoo selected a space in the orphanage wing, a large circular room that had been used for storage. She had maintenance remove all the hard furniture and metal fixtures. The floor was padded with thick, soft material. The lights were made adjustable, capable of dimming to almost darkness. Then Jiwoo did something that confused everyone. She requisitioned textiles from Earth, blankets, pillows, cushions, throws. She spent a significant portion of her personal credits having them shipped on a fast courier. When they arrived, she filled the room with them. Soft materials in every color and texture, piled in corners, draped over frames. Scattered across the floor, Vorin stood in the doorway, staring. "What is the purpose of all this fabric?" "Comfort," Jiwoo said simply. "These cubs do not need thermal regulation. Their units maintain perfect temperature. It's not about temperature. It's about feeling safe. These blankets are soft. They're gentle. You can wrap yourself in them, hide under them, build with them. For humans, soft things help us calm down when we're scared." Vorin touched one of the blankets hesitantly. Her forehands explored the texture. "It is pleasant," she admitted. "But I do not understand how this helps." "Trust me," Jiwoo said. "Watch what happens." The first session was scheduled for the following day. Jiwoo selected 8 cubs carefully. Pip, of course, who had been moved to a unit with an unlocked door and came out regularly now to sit with Jiwoo. Kix, the morphine amphibian who always pressed against the glass during reading time. Anna, the Drabic insect child who seemed curious rather than hostile. 5 others who showed signs of wanting contact but were too afraid to initiate it. The cubs were brought to the common room one at a time. Each entered cautiously, their various defensive mechanisms visible. Kix's skin glistened with stress mucus. A small mammalian cub named Toro had its quills partially raised. Anna's shell plates were sealed tight. Jiwoo sat in a comfortable chair in the center of the room. She had positioned it deliberately, making herself the focal point but not blocking any exits. She held a book but didn't read. She simply existed there, calm and still, the cubs spread out around the room's perimeter, as far from each other and from Jiwoo as possible. They watched everything with frightened eyes. Minutes passed in tense silence, then brave Pip, walked across the room toward Jiwoo. The other cubs tensed, ready to flee or fight. But Pip simply climbed onto a cushion near Jiwoo's feet and settled down. She looked at the others as if to say, "See? It's safe." Jiwoo began to hum softly, the same lullaby she always sang. The familiar sound seemed to ease something in the room. One by one, the cubs began to move. Not toward Jiwoo yet, but toward the blankets and pillows. Kix was the first to touch one. His webbed fingers explored a blue blanket and his eyes widened. He picked it up, feeling the texture, then wrapped it around his shoulders. The weight and softness seemed to surprise him. He made a small trilling sound of pleasure that broke the ice. Suddenly, all the cubs were investigating the materials. Anna discovered she could burrow under a pile of pillows. Toro found that wrapping a blanket around himself pressed his quills flat, which seemed to calm him. The mammalian cub pressed her face into a fuzzy pink cushion and made contented sounds. Jiwoo watched with tears in her eyes. They were playing. These traumatized, isolated children were actually playing. After an hour, Jiwoo spoke for the first time. On Earth, human children use blankets when they sleep. They help us feel safe and warm. Even adult humans like soft things when we're tired or sad. Several cubs looked at her with interest. She continued, keeping her voice gentle. "Would any of you like me to show you how humans wrap themselves in blankets?" Pip chirped eagerly. Jiwoo smiled and picked up a large blanket. She demonstrated wrapping it around her shoulders like a cape, then showed how to fold it into a cocoon. The cubs watched intently. Kix approached her slowly. He held out his blue blanket. "Show?" he asked in careful standard. It was the first word Jiwoo had heard any of them speak. "Of course." Jiwoo knelt down and gently helped Kix wrap the blanket around himself properly. "Like this. Now you're safe and cozy." Kix's large eyes blinked. Then he carefully touched Jiwoo's hand with one finger. "Thank you." By the end of the 3-hour session, all 8 cubs were sitting closer to Jiwoo than to the walls. They weren't touching her, weren't quite ready for that. But they were in her orbit, wrapped in blankets, calmer than Vorn had ever seen them. The nurse stood outside, watching through the observation window. Administrator Plex had joined her. They watched in silence as Jiwoo read a story to 8 different species, all listening peacefully. "I do not understand it," Plex said quietly. "But I cannot deny what I see. The human uses softness as a weapon against fear," Vorn replied. "She shows them that the world can be gentle. It has been one day, yes, imagine what 2 weeks might achieve." Over the following days, the change in the cubs was remarkable. They began to anticipate the common room sessions, becoming agitated if Wu was late. They started to interact with each other, cautiously at first but growing bolder. Pip taught another cub how to wrap a blanket. Kix shared his favorite cushion with Enna. On day 5, something incredible happened. One of the cubs, a small reptilian named Vex, had a nightmare flashback. He began to panic, his body temperature spiking dangerously. In the old protocols, this would have meant immediate sedation and isolation. Instead, Pip and Kix moved to Vex's side. They wrapped him in blankets, pressing the soft weight against him. Jiwoo approached slowly, humming the lullaby. She didn't touch Vex but sat nearby, maintaining her calm presence. Slowly, Vex's panic subsided. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't hurt himself. He just gradually calmed, surrounded by softness and the presence of others who understood his fear. Voron pulled Jiwoo aside afterward. That should have been a crisis situation. Medical intervention? Possible injury. Instead, it resolved in minutes. Because he wasn't alone, Jiwoo said. Fear is scarier when you're by yourself. Together, even cubs can help each other through it. By the end of 2 weeks, Commander Thalvar came to observe personally. He watched the session in silence, his armored face unreadable. 8 cubs played, rested, and interacted under Jiwoo's gentle supervision. They wrapped each other in blankets when someone seemed sad. They brought Jiwoo pillows when she looked tired. They were healing. After the session, Thalvar spoke to Woo directly. I was wrong about your methods. I thought softness meant weakness. Part 3. The sleep incident. 3 months had passed since Jiwoo first arrived at the station. The orphanage wing had transformed into something none of the staff had thought possible. 16 cubs now participated in daily sessions, with 7 more gradually being introduced. The containment units remained, but most stayed open. The cubs could retreat to them when they needed private space, but they chose to spend most of their time together. The common room had become the heart of their small community. Cubs would wake and immediately head there, wrapping themselves in their favorite blankets before breakfast. They ate together, played together, and learned together. Jiwoo had established routines that gave them structure and predictability. Story time at midday, quiet reflection in the afternoon, games and activities in the evening. And always the blankets. The other station staff were fascinated and confused in equal measure. Nurse Voron had become Jiwoo's strongest advocate, but even she struggled to explain it to others. How could simple fabric make such a difference? What was the mechanism? Jiwoo tried to explain during a staff meeting. For my species, we learn that emotional comfort is just as important as physical safety. A child can have food and shelter and still suffer terribly if they don't feel loved and secure. These blankets represent security. When a cub wraps themselves in one, they're taking control of their own comfort. That's powerful for someone who's lost everything. Administrator Plex, present at the meeting, asked, "But why do humans understand this when we do not?" I think, Jiwoo said carefully, it's because humans are very vulnerable as children. We're born helpless. We need years of care to survive. So we evolved to value comfort and emotional security. It became part of how we raise our young. Other species might have young that are more independent from birth. You probably don't need this kind of care. But these cubs do, Voron added quietly. Because trauma has made them vulnerable again. They need what human younglings need. The meeting concluded with approval to continue and expand the program. More human specialists were being requested from Earth, and Jiwoo would help train them. But that night, as Jiwoo lay in her small quarters, exhaustion finally caught up with her. She had been working 12-hour days for weeks, pouring all her energy into the cubs. The next morning brought a crisis. A transport ship experienced system failures during docking. It wasn't life-threatening, but it required all senior staff to help manage the emergency procedures. The ship carried medical supplies desperately needed elsewhere, and timing was critical. How long will you need to be gone? Jiwoo asked Voron as alarms echoed through the corridors. Minimum 18 hours. Possibly longer. Voron's forearms moved agitatedly. I can pull in junior staff for the cubs. No, Jiwoo said immediately. They don't know the junior staff well. That'll stress them. I'll stay with them overnight. Ooh, that's too long. You need rest. I'll be fine. It's just one night. Who tried to sound confident. Truthfully, she was already exhausted, but the cubs needed consistency. Introducing strangers during a stressful situation would undo weeks of progress, Voron reluctantly agreed. Emergency channel is open. Call if you need anything. By midday, all senior staff had been pulled to the docking bay. Jiwoo found herself alone with 16 cubs who sensed something was wrong. They were more clingy than usual, unwilling to let Woo out of sight. She reassured them constantly. It's okay. Just some grown-up work happening. We're safe here. Evening came. Jiwoo conducted their usual routine, but the cubs were restless. They didn't want to return to their individual units for sleep. "Stay?" Pip asked, her crystalline eyes pleading. "All stay together?" Jiwoo made a decision. "Okay, we'll all sleep in the common room tonight. Like a big sleepover." She helped the cubs arrange sleeping mats in a large circle. Each cub selected their favorite blankets and created their own small nests. Jiwoo placed her chair at the edge of the circle, positioning herself where she could see everyone, but the cubs wouldn't settle. Enna was afraid of nightmares. Kix kept making distressed sounds. A small feathered cub named Lyra kept checking the doors nervously. They all felt the absence of the regular staff, the change in routine. Uwu tried everything. She read 3 different stories. She sang every lullaby she knew. She talked to them about their days, about happy memories, about plans for tomorrow. Slowly, gradually, the cubs began to calm. "I'll stay awake," Jiwoo promised them as their eyes grew heavy. "I'll keep watch. Nothing bad will happen while I'm here. You can sleep safely." One by one, the cubs drifted off. Pip curled into her blanket nest. Kix tucked himself under a pile of cushions. Enna wrapped her delicate shell in the softest fleece. 16 small beings, 16 different species, all sleeping peacefully in one room. It was beautiful. Ua sat in her chair, determined to keep her promise. She would stay awake. She would protect them, but it had been such a long day. Such a long 3 months, really. Her body was heavy with exhaustion. Her eyes burned. "Just for a moment," she told herself. "Just close them for one moment." The book in her lap slipped from her fingers and landed softly on a cushion. Jiwoo's head tilted back. Within seconds, she was deeply asleep. She didn't know how long she slept. But Pip woke first, as she often did. The small Kelthian stretched and looked around the room, checking on her friends. All were sleeping peacefully. But then Pip saw G-Woo. The human was asleep, unguarded, vulnerable. Pip's species had strong protective instincts, even in the young. She understood on some deep level that the protector should not be exposed while sleeping. The protector needed protection too. Pip looked down at her own small blanket, the blue one with stars that Jiwoo had helped her pick out on her first day in the common room. Carefully, quietly, Pip picked up her blanket. She carried it across the space between her nest and Jiwoo's chair. Then, with gentle precision, she draped it over Jiwoo's legs. The slight movement caused Kix to wake. He saw what Pip was doing and understood immediately. Kix retrieved his favorite cushion and carefully placed it near Jiwoo's feet, adding warmth and comfort. This woke Enna, who saw both Pip and Kix tending to the sleeping human. Enna's species showed affection through covering and concealing, so she knew exactly what to do. She brought her softest blanket and added it to the growing pile on G-Woo. One by one, the cubs woke. Each saw what the others were doing. Each understood the mission without words. Jiwoo had spent months wrapping them in blankets, teaching them about warmth and comfort and safety. Now it was their turn. Taro brought his fuzzy green blanket. Lyra contributed her silky yellow one. Vex, the reptilian who had been calmed by blankets during his panic attack, carefully added his entire collection of pillows. They worked together with surprising coordination, each cub adding to the pile. They were careful not to wake Jiwoo, moving with a gentleness that would have amazed anyone watching. Within 20 minutes, Jiwoo was completely buried under a mountain of blankets and pillows. Only a small bit of her hair was visible. She was surrounded by every soft thing in the room, every piece of comfort the cubs possessed, but the cubs weren't finished. After Jiwoo was thoroughly covered, they arranged themselves in a protective circle around her chair. They didn't pile on top of her or crowd her. They simply positioned themselves as guardians. Some faced outward, watching the doors. Others faced inward, monitoring Jiwoo's breathing to make sure she was sleeping peacefully. This was how Nurse Voren found them at 6 in the morning. The docking emergency had been resolved faster than expected. Voren came to the orphanage wing to check on Jiwoo and the cubs, expecting to find them awake or just waking. Instead, she opened the door to the common room and stopped dead. There was an enormous pile of blankets in the center of the room. Around it, 16 cubs slept in a perfect circle, their bodies positioned protectively. It took Voron several seconds to realize Ji-woo was somewhere under that pile. Voron activated her communication device. Administrator Plex, Commander Thalvar. Come to the orphanage wing now. The slight sound of her voice woke the cubs. They stirred, then saw Voron standing in the doorway. Immediately they were on alert. Several moved to place themselves more directly between Voron and the buried Ji-woo. Pip made a low warning chirp. Kix's skin began to glisten with stress mucus. Enna's shell plates started to separate, showing her defensive spines. Voron froze. She had never seen the cubs act protective before. They were defending Ji-woo. They saw Voron as a potential threat to their sleeping guardian. It's all right, Voron said softly, keeping her forehands visible and non-threatening. I'm not here to hurt her. I'm checking that everyone is safe. The cubs didn't relax. Not until Ji-woo stirred beneath her mountain of blankets. Ji-woo woke up confused. She was warm, almost too warm. She was covered in something heavy and soft. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she heard Pip's chirping and Voron's voice, and memory returned. What? Ji-woo pushed at the blankets, struggling to sit up. Layers and layers of them fell away. She emerged from the pile like someone surfacing from water, her hair messy, her face creased with sleep. She looked around at the cubs, all watching her anxiously, and at Voron standing in the doorway. What happened? Ji-woo asked. Part 4. The observation, the footage, spread through the station faster than Ji-woo expected. Within days, everyone seemed to know about the human who fell asleep and the cubs who covered her with blankets. Some found it touching. Others found it strange. A few found it concerning. Commander Thalvar called a formal review. This is not a punishment, he assured Ji-woo as they walked to the conference chamber. But the Coalition Council has questions. What you have achieved is unprecedented. They want to understand it. The chamber was filled with representatives from various species. Some Ji-woo recognized from around the station. Others had traveled specifically for this meeting. At the center sat a thin, severe-looking being with pale skin and too many joints. Ambassador Kreth of the Yulani delegation? Let us be clear about what occurred, Kreth began without preamble. A trained specialist fell asleep during duty hours, leaving vulnerable children unsupervised. That alone is a violation of protocols. Wu felt her face flush. I was exhausted from, I am not interested in excuses, Kreth interrupted. What interests me is the response. These cubs, traumatized and dangerous, did not harm you. Instead, they performed coordinated care behaviors. I want to know why. A new voice spoke up. Because they love her. Everyone turned to see a Korvath scientist entering the chamber. She had multiple eyes on stalks and shimmering skin. I am Dr. Hana, xenopsychologist. I have reviewed all footage of the humans' interactions with the cubs. What we are witnessing is pack bonding. Pack bonding? Kreth's tone was skeptical. Yes, humans have an unusual capacity for forming familial attachments across species boundaries. They bond with creatures that should be predators. They adopt animals that are not even remotely similar to them. This human, Ji-woo, has extended that bonding capacity to alien children. Dr. Hannah pulled up holographic displays showing various clips. Ji-woo sitting peacefully while cubs explored around her. Ji-woo wrapping Kix in a blanket. Ji-woo humming lullabies while Enna pressed against her side. Notice the human's body language, Dr. Hannah continued. She is always calm, non-threatening. She does not demand affection or interaction. She simply provides consistent, gentle presence. This is how human caregivers nurture their own young. But unlike most species, humans can extend this nurturing behavior to beings that are not their genetic offspring. And the cubs respond, another delegate observed, even across species barriers. Because trauma has made them need what human younglings need, Dr. Hannah said. Security, comfort, predictability, physical gentleness. The human provides all of this. She pulled up the footage of the cubs covering Ji-woo. And here we see the reciprocation. The cubs have learned care from the human. Now they provide it back. This is family bonding? Ambassador Kreth stood. This is concerning. We cannot have alien children more attached to a human than to their own species. When we find adoptive families for them, how will they adjust? Will they reject their own kind? That's not how it works, Jiwoo said, finding her voice. Love isn't limited. Teaching a child to trust and bond with me doesn't stop them from bonding with others. It gives them the foundation to do so. You cannot know that. I do know it. On Earth, children in orphanages who receive early nurturing care develop better relationships throughout their lives. Children who are isolated develop attachment disorders. These cubs are learning that the universe can be safe, that others can be gentle. That will help them, not hurt them. The debate continued for over 2 hours. Some delegates supported Jiwoo's program. Others expressed concerns about cultural contamination, about making alien children too human. Finally, Commander Thalvar called for order. We are not here to debate philosophy. We are here to evaluate results. The data is clear. Cubs in Jiwoo's program show remarkable improvement. Better health, better social skills, reduced trauma responses. No other program has achieved this. Because no other program uses humans, Kreth argued. What happens when this human leaves? When she inevitably returns to Earth? The cubs will be devastated. You will have created new trauma. Jiwoo's heart sank. She hadn't thought that far ahead. But Kreth was right. She couldn't stay forever. What would happen to Pip, to Kix, to all of them when she left? Dr. Hannah spoke up. That is why we must expand the program. Not just this human. Many humans. Train them in these methods. Create continuity of care. Earth has sent inquiries about deploying more specialists. Let them come, and if they fail? If other humans cannot replicate Jiwoo's success? Then we will know humans are not uniquely suited for this work. But I believe they are. Humans have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. They understand communal care. They understand that nurturing the young is everyone's responsibility, not just biological parents. The vote was called, expand the human caregiver program or terminate it and return to standard protocols. Jiwoo watched the delegates, trying not to show her anxiety. 16 cubs depended on this decision. Hundreds more across the coalition could benefit if this passed. The votes came in slowly. Some were immediate yeses. Others were reluctant noes. It was close. Too close. Finally, only one delegate remained. A Kelthian representative, the same species as Pip. She had been silent throughout the meeting. I wish to speak, the Kelthian said. I lost my own cubs in the war. My entire family. When I heard a Kelthian youngling was in this program, I came to observe. She activated a personal display, showing footage of Pip, not the official station footage, but something she had recorded herself through the observation windows. Pip playing, Pip laughing, Pip carefully sharing a blanket with a smaller cub. This is the first time since the war that I have seen one of our younglings express joy, the Kelthian said, her voice breaking. Pip was silent for 6 months, unresponsive. We thought she would never recover. But the human reached her. The human gave her back something we could not. The Kelthian looked directly at Jiwoo. Yesterday I visited the orphanage wing. I sat outside the common room. Pip saw me through the window. She recognized my species. And she came to the window and spoke. Do you know what she said? Jiwoo shook her head, tears already forming. She said, Woo, safe. I keep warm. She has claimed you as family. In Kelthian culture, that is sacred. You are her chosen pack now. The delegate turned to address the chamber. How can I vote against something that returned a lost cub to life? I vote to expand the program. The vote passed. Jiwoo felt relief crash over her like a wave. Beside her, Commander Thalvar nodded approvingly. Even Dr. Hannah looked pleased. Only Ambassador Kreth remained unconvinced, leaving the chamber with a disapproving expression. After the meeting, Ji-woo returned to the orphanage wing. The cubs were having their afternoon quiet time, each settled with blankets and cushions. But they all looked up when Ji-woo entered, sensing something different. "Is everything okay?" Kix asked in his improving standard. Ji-woo sat down in her usual chair, and immediately cubs began migrating toward her. "Everything is wonderful. I have good news. More humans are coming. Friends who will help me take care of all of you. And they'll help other cubs on other stations too. More humans?" Pip climbed into Ji-woo's lap. "Like you?" "Yes, people who understand about blankets and gentleness and keeping watch over each other." Anna approached slowly. "But you stay too? You don't leave?" Ji-woo pulled the small Dravik close. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise. This is my home now. You are my home." The cubs seemed to relax. Toro brought Ji-woo a blanket, draping it over her shoulders. "You looked cold," he said, though the temperature was perfectly comfortable. Ji-woo understood. It wasn't about temperature. It was about care. "Thank you, Toro. That's very kind." Over the following weeks, 3 more humans arrived. Taeyang was a tall man with a gentle smile who specialized in trauma recovery. Dayan was a young woman trained in occupational therapy, teaching cubs skills for daily life. Hyunsik was an educator, ready to start teaching when the cubs were ready to learn. Ji-woo trained them carefully. She showed them how to sit without demanding attention, how to offer comfort without forcing it, how to use blankets and soft materials to create safe spaces, how to read the subtle signs that a cub needed closeness or needed space. "The key," Ji-woo explained, "is patience. You can't rush bonding. You just have to be consistently safe. The cubs will come to you when they're ready." Taeyang worked with the more severely traumatized cubs. Dayan helped cubs relearn basic skills they'd lost to trauma. Hyunsik started simple lessons, teaching language and numbers through games. And Ji-woo coordinated everything, making sure each cub got what they needed. The common room expanded. More space was added. New areas were created for different activities. But always, there were blankets. Cubs could grab one whenever they needed comfort. The rule was simple. Blankets were for everyone, and everyone got to choose their favorite. One evening, Ji-woo found Pip teaching a newly arrived cub how to wrap a blanket properly. "Like this," Pip demonstrated. "You pull it around. It makes you safe." Ji-woo taught me. The new cub, a small fuzzy being named Ori, watched intently. "Why does it make you safe?" "Because it's soft. And soft things are gentle. And gentle means no hurt." Pip's logic was child simple but profound. "Oh," Ori said. Then carefully, "Will the humans hurt us?" "No," Pip said with absolute certainty. "Humans keep." Part 5. Ripples across the stars. 6 months changed everything. The orphanage wing that had once been a place of isolation and fear was now filled with light and laughter. All 23 cubs thrived. They played together, learned together, and cared for each other. The humans provided guidance, but the cubs themselves had become a community. Ji-woo stood at the observation window, watching Pip help a younger cub with reading practice. Nearby, Kix was showing Toro how to paint. Enna sat with 3 other cubs, all wrapped in blankets, listening as Dayun read a story. It was peaceful. It was normal. It was everything Ji-woo had hoped for. "Remarkable," a voice said beside her. Ji-woo turned to see a military officer she didn't recognize. The insignia marked her as high-ranking. "I am General Maraven of the Torthus Fleet. I commanded the evacuation of Kelthus Prime during the war." Ji-woo straightened, suddenly nervous. "Hello, General. I came to see if the reports were true. They said a human had performed miracles with war orphans." Maraven's eyes were fixed on the cubs. "I led the evacuation. I saw what happened to the younglings. The terror. The loss. Many died in my arms. Those who survived were ... broken. They're healing," Ji-woo said softly. "I see that. But I don't understand how. My species has raised young for thousands of years. We have protocols, systems, medical care, yet we could not reach them. You did? Why? Jiwoo thought about how to explain. General, can I ask you something? When you comfort someone who is scared, what do? Provide security. Ensure threats are eliminated. Offer logical reassurance. And if that doesn't work? Marvin paused. Then we provide medical intervention. Sedation if necessary. Humans do something different, Jiwoo said. We hold. We rock. We make soft sounds. We wrap in gentle things. We don't just protect from threats. We create comfort. Does that make sense? Not entirely. But I cannot argue with success. Marvin looked at Jiwoo directly. I lost my own younglings in the war. 3 cubs. When I see what you've done here, I feel... She trailed off, struggling with words. I feel that perhaps they could have been reached too, if we had known this way. Jiwoo's heart broke. I'm so sorry for your loss. I share this not for sympathy, but for understanding. What you provide is not just care. It is something we forgot was possible after the war. You provide hope. Marvin straightened. I am authorizing 3 more stations to request human caregivers. If you can train them as you've trained the others here, we could help hundreds more cubs. The expansion happened faster than anyone expected. Within 3 months, human caregivers were working on 12 different stations. Each one trained personally by Jiwoo or her team. Each one carrying the same philosophy: gentleness is strength, comfort is necessary, and every being deserves to feel safe. The results were consistent. Cubs who had been unreachable began to respond. Trauma behaviors decreased. Social skills improved. The data was overwhelming. Human nurturing protocols became officially recognized by the coalition as best practice for traumatized younglings. Not everyone approved. Ambassador Kreth continued to object, filing formal complaints. Some species felt their cultural practices were being disrespected. Others worried about human influence spreading too far. But the families who adopted the cubs saw the difference. Children who had been withdrawn and fearful were now capable of bonding, of trusting, of loving. One afternoon, Ruhr received an unexpected visitor. A Kelthian couple, formally dressed, approached her in the orphanage wing. They held themselves with nervous dignity. We are Shav-Ven and Talris, the female said. We are here about Pip. Jiwoo's heart clenched. She had known this day would come. Pip was ready for adoption. The cub had healed enough to join a family. But the thought of losing her hurt more than Jiwoo had anticipated. You want to meet her, Jiwoo said. We want to adopt her, Talris replied. If she will have us. We lost our own cub in the war. We thought we could never open our hearts again. But we saw the footage of Pip, how she cares for others, how she learned gentleness from you. We want to give her a home. She's wonderful, Jiwoo said, tears already forming. She's brave and kind and so smart. Will you introduce us? Jiwoo brought the couple into the common room. Pip was playing with several other cubs, wrapped in her favorite blue blanket with stars. When she saw the Kelthian adults, she froze. She recognized her own species. For a moment, fear flashed in her eyes. Jiwoo knelt beside her. Pip, these are Shav-Ven and Talris. They came to meet you. They're hoping to be your family. Family? Pip's voice was small. Yes, a forever home. Where you would live with them and they would take care of you. But you take care of me. I do. And I always will in my heart. But you deserve a family of your own species. People who can teach you about Kelthian culture, about your heritage. You deserve a home. Pip looked at the couple, then back at Jiwoo. Will I forget? Will I forget the blankets? Will I forget how to keep others warm? Shav-Ven stepped forward slowly, keeping her body language non-threatening. We would never ask you to forget. The human way is beautiful. We want to learn it too. In fact, she pulled something from her bag. A blanket, blue with stars, just like Pip's but larger. We brought this. So you could teach us. Pip's eyes widened. She looked at Jiwoo for guidance. It's your choice, Jiwoo said, even though it hurt to say. I will love you no matter what you choose. But I think they want to learn from you. You could teach them what I taught you. Slowly, carefully, Pip approached the couple. She reached out and touched the blanket they offered. Then she looked up at them. If I come with you, can Jiwoo visit? Whenever you want, Taurus promised. And can I bring blankets for the other cubs? So they know I didn't forget them? Of course. Pip considered this. Then, with a maturity beyond her young years, she made her decision. Okay, I will try. But you have to promise to be gentle. That's the rule. You always have to be gentle. We promise? Shavin said, her voice breaking with emotion. The adoption process took 2 weeks. Jiwoo spent every moment preparing Pip, making sure she understood she could change her mind, that she was safe. On the last day, all the cubs gathered to say goodbye. Each one gave Pip a blanket to take with her. By the end, she had 17 blankets in her bag. You are the best of us, Kik said, his amphibious eyes glistening. You taught us to be brave. Wu taught us, Pip corrected. I just learned it first. When it was time to leave, Pip hugged Jiwoo tightly. Thank you for keeping me warm when I was cold. I will never forget. I will never forget you either, Jiwoo whispered. You were my first? You taught me that this could work. You are so special, Pip. Will you be okay? When I'm gone? Jiwoo smiled through her tears. Yes, because I have all the others to keep warm. And you have a family who will learn your way. You're taking the gentleness with you. That's perfect. Pip left with her new family, carrying 17 blankets and a heart full of learned love. Jiwoo watched them go, feeling both grief and pride in equal measure. This was the goal, to heal cubs enough that they could move forward. But knowing that didn't make the goodbye easier. That night, the remaining cubs gathered around Jiwoo. They understood she was sad. Without words, they brought every blanket in the room and piled them on her, just like they had when she fell asleep. But this time she was awake. This time it was deliberate comfort. We're still here, Kik said. You still keep us warm. And we keep you warm, Anna added. Over the next year, more cubs were adopted. Each departure was bittersweet. But each successful adoption proved the program worked. Cubs were healing enough to bond with new families. They carried the lessons of gentleness with them. Spreading the human way across the coalition. Jiwoo was promoted to Director of Coalition Child Services. Her office was on a different level of the station, with more responsibility and more meetings. But every day she returned to the orphanage wing. She sat in her chair, wrapped in whatever blankets the current cubs had chosen for her, and provided the same gentle presence she always had. New cubs arrived regularly. Some came from war zones, others from accidents or diseases that took their families. Each one was frightened. Each one was hurting. And each one learned the same lesson. The universe could be soft. Earth sent more specialists. Dozens of humans trained in the protocols Jiwoo had developed. They spread across coalition space, bringing blankets and gentleness with them. Some worked with cubs. Others worked with adults who had trauma. The human approach to emotional care was becoming recognized as uniquely effective. One evening, 5 years after Jiwoo first arrived at the station, she received a message. It was from Pip, now a young adult. She was training to be a diplomat, working to improve relations between species. But more importantly, she had started a program on her home colony, teaching Kelthians about human nurturing methods, spreading the philosophy of gentleness. The message included a picture. Pip, now grown, sitting in a room full of Kelthian cubs, all of them wrapped in blankets, all of them looking peaceful and safe. Pip was smiling. The message read, Jiwoo, I never forgot. I'm keeping them warm, just like you taught me. Thank you for showing me that being gentle is the bravest thing we can do. I hope I make you proud. Cried reading it. Tae-young found her in her office, tears streaming down her face, clutching her tablet. Bad news? He asked with concern.